Welcome to the Post-Game Spread podcast. For those of you that have already been with us, welcome back. For our new listeners, let me introduce myself, welcome you, and explain what this podcast is all about. My name is Blake Helm. I'm a firefighter, veteran, and former pro baseball player myself. I had a wild journey through baseball that, to put it in a nutshell, let's just say I had some tools and some promise. I played some D1 baseball. I had 5 surgeries in college. Could not stay on the field, and it was an absolute battle to come back every time. After college ended for me, I ended up walking away and joining the military. I was done with baseball. Served my 4 years in the military, and towards the end, I kept having these dreams that I had to finish this. I had to have my vision quest and play pro baseball, and that to speed this up, I was playing wiffle ball with some buddies. Turned into playing in a men's league, turns into playing for the U.S. military all-star baseball team, turns into trying out and making a reality show with Cal Ripken as the host called The Player that never aired. The winner was supposed to get a contract with the Orioles, and that turned into bouncing around indie ball with mixed results, some good, some bad for a couple years, and then it all ended with a fastball dotting me in the temple, and I had post-concussion syndrome for 6 months. So an absolute crazy ride, and through all of that, I learned a lot about myself, a lot about life, and how to overcome. And I had a chance to go on my buddy's podcast a year or two ago and tell my story. And it was so therapeutic and fun and awesome to give thanks to all these people that helped me along the way. I think baseball is such a great teacher of life and life lessons if you pay attention. So from there, I thought, I want to do my own podcast. I want to give back to the baseball community in my own way and be a part of it. And I want to help guys tell their stories, their unique stories and their journeys through baseball and what they learned along the way, and help them, pass along their knowledge. Because what good is knowledge if we don't pass it along? So I've been going back and talking with former pros with interesting stories, talking with their parents, their friends, their teams, their coaches, their managers to get context, to get clips, to get quotes. And it's really been a celebration of someone's career and what they went through. It's somewhere between podcast and biography. It's positive. It's a celebration. I think we really have something here that's special, and I'd love for it to grow organically, whereas one door opens another door, and we keep opening up to new guests here. So I would love for this to reach, pros with great stories, big leagues, minor league guys. So if anyone is out there listening, you think you have a great story, or someone you played with has a great story, and you want to get in touch with us and be a part of this, be on it, my email is thepostgamespread@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from people. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. I'm extremely excited to announce that this episode is being brought to you by DC Kitchens. In the greater Louisville area, phone number 502-296-7574. That's right, this is Don Cunningham himself, the man that raised the man. This is Wes's dad. This is a master craftsman. This guy has been at it for 43 plus years, working on kitchens, working on his craft. If you think back to the golden rule of spending 10,000 hours on something to become a master, try more like 100,000 hours for Don. And not for nothing, he's a cool guy. He's got a cool vibe. Go see him. He will get your kitchen right. Thanks, Don. We are also brought to you by Rude Boards, a custom skateboard company located in Cincinnati, Ohio, made by none other than the legend himself, Wes Cunningham. They're hand-pressed, hand-shaped, hand-painted, hand-stained. He's built quite the following on Instagram. This is not some rinky-dink little thing. He has over 13,000 followers. Go find him on Instagram at rude_boards, or you can contact him via email wscunningham1@gmail. Talk about a guy living his life authentically. It's Wes. Go get a Rude Board. A little disclaimer before we get rolling here. You're about to hear some ads. They are all from local entities that want to support the baseball community. A lot of these guys have deep connections. We're players themselves, so if you see having a need for any one of these services, please go patronize these guys. Thank you. We are also brought to you by 226 Sports, located at 3604 North Peoria Road, 217-670-1609. Springfield info at turn2outs.com. Multiple entities under this umbrella. Turn 2 training, which is team or individual instruction. Teams can come in and rent it out, or an individual can come in and get instruction from a top-of-the-line instructor. There's the Extreme Baseball and Softball Club run by my buddy Kyle Welch. They have 9U all the way up to 17U teams, and Washco Strength and Speed, one of our other sponsors. We are officially backing this entity, and it's because of Kyle Welch. I love this guy. I love his passion. I love his knowledge. I love his vision. He's an absolute baseball dude. He knows hitting. Like I said, he has a vision to grow this into what Springfield deserves, and that's a top-of-the-line facility to help young ball players progress. I believe in Kyle as a person and as a leader of young men. Go see 226 Sports. We are also brought to you by Jared Washco of Washco Strength and Speed, located at 3604 North Peoria Road, 217-899-3233, washcostrengthandspeed.com. I think Jared is the premier trainer for youth athletics in the Springfield area, specifically baseball and softball. He is on it, from his training modalities to his throwing programs to speed to getting stronger to getting faster. The proof is in the pudding. Jared cranks out athletes at high levels that go on to the collegiate levels. Go see Jared for all your strength and speed needs. It brings me great pleasure to announce that we are now brought to you by Iron Palm Coffee, located in the parking lot at Soccer World, Lawrence and Durkin, right off Veterans Parkway. This is a long time coming. This is a good friend of mine, a very inspirational friend of mine. He's had this vision for years, finally coming to fruition. He fell in love with the coffee business many years ago because it connects people. It brings people together. Personally, I am forever in debt to this guy and his story. It's inspirational. He's been through a ton. I think he's a warrior and a champion of a person. So go see Iron Palm Coffee in the parking lot at Soccer World. Put some iron in your blood. We appreciate you, Iron Palm Coffee. We are also brought to you by Jason Knadler and the Bank of Springfield. They have a whole baseball team over there. I'm talking Jason Knadler, Justin Knadler, Timmy Wallen, Eric Weaver, Ryan Murphy, Greg Morantz, Murph Mathiet, Frank Stefano. I trust these guys. I respect these guys. Go see them for all your banking needs. Bank boldly with BOS. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. Here we go, buddy.
Let's do it.
Okay, well, here we go, guys. We're back for another episode of the Post-Game Spread here. I'm your host, Blake Helm. I've got Mr. Wesley Sawyer Cunningham sitting in front of me, Wes himself. This is so cool. This is my first former teammate that I'm getting to do here, so it was awesome for me to go back and talk to all these former Breds and just get more context on all the things that are Wes. You're one of the most unique, coolest teammates that I ever had, so if you guys know how we start this typically, I go through his background, I go through who I talk to, how I know Wes, kind of some interesting parts to the stories that I think, and then we kind of start from the beginning. So let me take my deep breath here and get all the way into Wes's stuff here. I'm sitting here looking at Wes via Zoom. We've texted over the years, but probably the first actual phone conversation, face to face that we've had in probably 10 years or so. So this is going to be awesome. Here we go. A 2006 Eastern High School graduate in Louisville, Kentucky. Played under the recently inducted into the Hall of Fame coach John Morris. He was awesome to talk to. Moving on to the Murray State Thoroughbreds. Majored in history, minored in archaeology, playing for Coach Rob McDonald, where he went on to rewrite the record books and become the greatest offensive player in Murray State history, becoming MSU's all-time leader in career batting average, 399 hits, 237, triples, 14, RBIs, 167, total bases, 406, while also being third all-time with 161 runs scored, fifth with career home runs with 35. His name appears 17 times in the Murray State single-season top 10 list across 11 statistical categories. First team All-OVC 3 times, OVC Player of the Year in 2010, whereas 192 total bases and 86 RBIs are all-time OVC single-season records. Still a 3-time ESPN Magazine first team All-Academic selection, a 2010 ESPN The Magazine second team All-American selection. Also honored as a Louisville Slugger third team All-American, as well as being one of the 30 finalists for the Dick Hauser Award, which is the top collegiate baseball player in Division I history, or in Division I. Also named the Jayhawk League top prospect before being drafted in the 17th round by the Padres, before going on to enjoy a short but productive stint in the Padres farm system, before going back and getting his master's in public history from the University of Louisville. Moving on to background and interviews. This was so fun, dude. I read every article there is on Wes Cunningham. I read your thesis paper that you wrote for your master's, parts of it. I listened to your Running with the Rebels podcast with Dave Winder 3 times. I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job with that. You did great too. So here we go. We talked to Don Cunningham himself, DC, the father, the man who raised the man. I talked to Daniel Calhoun, DeCal, 2009 29th rounder for the Cardinals, had a nice minor league career. Love that guy. KT, Kyle Tiernan, one of your best friends, former Murray State shortstop, wildly talented. Coach Rob McDonald himself, former Murray State head coach, played at U of I, played at Murray State. Dan Skirka, former Murray State assistant, current head coach. Dave Winder, former Bred himself, assistant AD, all things media with Murray State. Brian Probst, former teammate, guy could absolutely mash. Coach John Morris, your coach at Eastern High School, recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. Zach Noonan, Trubbs, former Murray State outfielder, had an amazing career there as well, wildly talented. Same thing with Elliot Frey, former teammate, outfielder, wildly talented. Brian Baldini, your high school teammate, family friend, former teammate of the on the Breds. D. Hill, Daniel Hill, former Bred slugger, outfielder, had second in the home run record. That guy is absolutely hilarious. I love him. Finally, Tyler Owen, T.O., a Murray State bred great in his own right. Third baseman, 4-year prestigious career. That guy could absolutely ball. Here we go, man. How I finally know Wes. And this is like some fun stuff for me. So I can remember back to you, me showing up as a JUCO transfer, you being a freshman coming in, right? And I'm seeing the tattoos, and I'm seeing the shaved head and like the cut off sleeves and the dress pants. And I'm like, who is this guy? This is not a typical baseball guy by any means. This is not who you would expect to walk into a Division I locker room, right? Or not your typical Coach Mac recruit or just typical baseball guy. And that's part of what makes this so interesting too. And then, I'm a curious guy. I remember asking you kind of like, what kind of music are you into, dude? Or maybe I saw it on Facebook or something, and you were like, Psychobilly. And I was like, well, first I had never heard of it. And I didn't know what it was. And I put the 2 words together, and I was like, cool, this guy is into psychotic hillbilly music. So I was like, I don't need to ask any more questions about this. That's good enough. And I think eventually I came back to it. And that's not what it is at all. But there's like funny stuff like that. And you and I always had a very easy friendship, and we kind of had similar senses of humor. We bonded over In Living Color. We can get to it at some point, but we did a Halloween costume together, Men on Films, which was pretty hilarious. And then on a little more serious note, I think, Wes, we'll get into it. I thought you absolutely did the best that I've ever known or seen at balancing college out in terms of like enjoying every aspect of your college appropriately. When it came to the baseball field, you were there. You were in the moment. When it came to the weight room, you were all there. When it came to your academics, you were all in. When it came to your social life and just having fun, like you did it right. There were some guys like maybe like me and a KT and a TO that took it maybe too serious sometimes, and some guys not serious enough. And you balanced it so well. And then lastly, the thing that I thought was so cool, and it made sense to me when I talked to your dad, was you had this air of like confidence and like, I know who I am as like an 18-year-old. And that's kind of unheard of. Like, I don't feel like I had an idea who I was until I was dang near 30. And you just walked into Murray State just who you were. And when I talked to your dad, there's an absolute, ease, confidence, coolness to him as well. And, I don't think the apple falls far from the tree when it comes to that. So we'll get into that at some point. Lastly, interesting parts to the story. This guy was barely recruited out of high school. Like, you were getting nibbles from like NAIAs and, Transylvania and D2s. And I don't think you signed until midway through the summer, dang near, with Murray State, right? And all because of Baldini. And we'll get there. But this man got 6 at-bats and was essentially our bullpen catcher his freshman year, and then went on to rewrite the Murray State record books. I mean, that, if you can't be romantic about that in baseball, I don't know what you can. Drafted in the 17th round, but there's so many more layers to Wes. You know, Wes is a skateboarder, Wes is a drummer, Wes is a free thinker, Wes is a reader, a scholar, a historian, an archaeologist, the Indiana Jones stuff. So you did it your way, and we're going to get into all of that. And I think it's beautiful, dude. So, all right, Wes, now that I'm done chatting, how the heck are we doing? Are you ready to do this thing?
Oh man, I'm excited. I've been ready since you and I started. I think since you started the podcast, I think you reached out early and said,
Yeah.
"Man, I'm starting this. I got this idea for a podcast, and I want you to be on it." And ever since then, I've been eager and ready. I mean, I don't get to talk to too many of the Breads as often as I'd like.
Yeah.
Some of us get together every now and then for the alumni events and things like that. But every time I get a chance to catch up, and it's something I look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you know how we get down with this, we start at the very beginning and kind of like,
Yes, sir.
you know, childhood. What are the steps to success? How did this all come together for you? And this is going to be unlike any other baseball story. Like I said, Wes is not a typical baseball guy. It's an unlikely baseball path, and it's really cool. So had an absolutely amazing conversation with your dad, and he actually sent me, I texted it to you, but he sent me 2 of your baseball cards after we talked and a really nice handwritten note. So shout out to this guy. I mean, he's got just the easy cool to him. And, you know, my mom would be very proud of him for this because she is very big on the lost art of thank you notes. So
I'll
shout
tell
out to
you,
DC.
man, the reason I am who I am and were able to, did what I did and I'm still able to do what I do is because of my parents.
Yeah.
They are 2 of the best. Now that I'm a father myself, I was telling you earlier, it's good to have a role model.
Yeah.
As a man who's new to being a dad, to have, my own positive role model to look up to.
Yeah.
And
like,
he's that.
yeah, from what I gathered, I mean, there's such a closeness with you guys and your mom and your brother too. Like I got to learn a little bit about the whole family. Davis the dog, you know, I know about the whole thing, buddy. So I would love to hear, like, you know, I've got some quotes from your dad, but we'll get into those. But I would love to hear what it was like growing up in the Cunningham household. Like, you know, how'd it go for you, bud?
Well, man, it was great. I'm fortunate to come from a very loving, supportive household.
Yeah.
But as you kind of mentioned, my, you know, the baseball side of things, it was never. I didn't come from like a household that was really heavily sports motivated. My dad never really played sports.
Yeah.
He'll be the first to tell you that in high school he was named Mr. PE, but that's just because he was lazy and took 4 years of PE. So I mean, there's no, short of me going to his, his beer league softball games as a kid, there was, they were always eager to support us if we wanted to play sports. And both my brother and I did, and we were very fortunate that we both excelled. My brother also went on; he played some D3 baseball, and now he's
Transylvania.
And now he's an assistant athletic director at Arkansas State. Slowly,
wow.
I mean, it won't be long before you all be seeing his name.
That's cool.
As an AD at a big school. I know it. But yeah, so growing up, we grew up in Louisville. Like I said, just very, very supportive house, very supportive family. We played some sports growing up. Like I said, it was never forced on us. I remember my dad had 2 rules if we were to sign up for sports, and none of them were about winning. I mean, he didn't really know much. He always tells people, he jokes that, he didn't know enough about the game to coach like some of the other dads, but he still wanted to be involved. So he became the commissioner of the league, of the Recreation Association, Middletown Recreation Association, MRA.
Oh, cool.
He was the commissioner for a few years because he wanted to be involved, but he didn't know enough to coach. But he had 2 rules if we signed up, and I remember this to the day I die. I'm gonna have the same rules for my boys.
Love it.
It's, I don't care if you win or lose. I don't care, if you play well, if you have a bad game, if you sit the bench all day, I care that if you sign up, number 1, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
Which means you go, there are going to be days in the summertime when your friends are going to the pool and you have practice. You signed up for a commitment, you go.
Absolutely.
The second rule was more geared towards me, not so much my brother, and it was control your damn temper. Which,
Well, that's going to be a theme going forward, isn't it?
yes, it will, because that lesson didn't necessarily stick as well as the other. But yeah, so I mean, we had this great opportunity that if we wanted to pursue anything,
Yeah.
they were 100% behind us. You mentioned skateboarding. I remember when I wanted to get my first skateboard. They knew nothing about it. My dad was a little
Yeah.
worried, I'm sure, about me hurting myself, but didn't stop them
Yeah.
from going out and buying me a skateboard. As I got older into middle school and early high school, when I started skateboarding a lot more frequently, getting good and things like that, my dad was the first one to help me build ramps for the driveway. We built
Wow.
a quarter pipe. He
Yeah.
found a he found a piece of I think it was angle iron or some shit that fell off a truck on the highway. He stopped, picked it up, and he went to my uncle's house and welded legs on the thing
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
that I could skate it. So I mean, like, they I think a lot of what made me as confident and eager to go 100% into things is because that's how they were. They were,
Yeah.
that's how they parented, man. They were 100%.
That's amazing.
They and it was just, I was very fortunate. I remember um and this might be getting a little ahead, but I remember in high school, Coach Morris came to my dad, and Coach Morris, man, that guy wanted to win. He wanted to win
Yeah.
more than most people I've met. And I remember him pulling my dad aside. And I didn't know about this at the time, but my dad has since told me that he pulled my dad aside and said, Wes is playing in these bands and doing this other stuff. He's got to focus. He's got, this is his only chance to play high school baseball. And my
Yeah.
dad was like, this is his only chance to be a kid. I'm not telling him what he can and can't do. Like,
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
this is his only time.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of the epitome of my childhood, man.
Man.
I had two parents who were 100% in and were 100% supportive
Yeah.
of everything. And that kind of made me who I am.
Chills, man. This is cool, really hearing kind of like where, obviously, like I see the finished product of what you became as a man, but like hearing kind of the details of how you got there and like the minutia of it is really cool. It sounds like you had a very supportive, parental structure that were just willing to support whatever you wanted to do and just, be there for you and to support. I mean, that's amazing, right?
It's dude.
Wow.
You can't put, it's hard to put words to, and you can't, you can't really quantify it because it's something that is just, it means so much, and
Yeah.
it ripples throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Still is. And, so you talked a little bit about skateboarding. When did you get into skateboarding? Because I don't know. I didn't know any, like I skateboarded a little bit. Maybe I was kind of drawn to you a little bit because I didn't know anyone else that ever skateboarded that was a baseball player. I did some in middle school, but you went on and like actually did some real skateboarding. When did it start
Yeah.
for you? How deep did that get for you?
So I probably started. I was probably like late elementary school, middle school
Yeah.
when I took to it, and I remember, um, I had buddies who on the weekends we'd hang out at each other's houses and we'd skateboard and we'd have fun just like any other kid. But I didn't grow up in like a typical subdivision where my folks' house it's located. Uh, it was much more of a secluded street back then. It's since been developed around their house a little bit more. But um, in the summertime, I remember all those guys I hung out with. They all had their subdivisions and their neighborhood pools and all that stuff, and so they'd all hang out together. And I'm in middle school. I have no way of getting over to their house. My parents are at work, so I made friends with some folks who were in the neighborhoods close to me, and we took skateboarding just a little more serious. That was all we could do. That we
Yeah.
didn't have a neighborhood pool.
Right.
We didn't have as many, kids just running around as you see in these, subdivisions. So
Yeah.
me and this other group of guys, we just kind of we skateboarded. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember we would hop on the city bus and get off at random exits and just skate around town.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's that repetition, that practice, I started to get pretty good.
Yeah.
Within reason. I mean, I'm not talking like, gonna ever make a living out of doing, but I was pretty good for a
Yeah.
while. And then late high school is when I kind of started having the hopes that I would get a chance to play baseball at the next level,
Mhm.
and a broken ankle doesn't help that. And that was right around the time, you get your driver's license, and then all of a sudden the skateboard isn't necessarily a way to get around town.
Yep.
So it kind of went by the wayside. But
Yeah.
I mean, in my
Aren't you
now,
back into it in some way now?
so I actually make skateboards now
Yeah,
as a
that's
hobby.
crazy.
Yeah, that's the shirt I'm wearing. Rude
Really?
boards.
Rude boards?
Yeah.
That's
So
sick.
like,
Tell me about that.
so I can show you. There's several of them in my office right now.
Oh, cool, dude.
Uh, yeah, man. It was right after I finished my master's. Emily, who's now my wife,
Mhm.
we bought a house in Louisville. I got a job right out of my master's program, and bought a house. And I was like, I'm out of school. I've got a career. I'm going to do what most adults do. I'm going to get back into my childhood hobby. I'm going to start skateboarding again. We lived in a neighborhood where I could skate to the,
It's awesome.
brewery on the corner, or the little corner restaurant.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, man, I was into it. Like, I had uh, all the videos, all the magazines. I cared about who the skaters were, the
Yeah.
brands. I cared about all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, as a 30-year-old getting back into it, I'm like, I don't give a damn who these people are. I don't want to pay $65 for a skateboard with some guy's name on it and a design that I don't give two shits about. Uh, so so I decided, I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna dive into this hobby a little bit more. I'm gonna start. I'll buy blanks. I'll buy skateboards just blank. Buy them in bulk, super cheap, and I'll start painting them. I've always had like an artistic side.
Yeah.
So I started painting them, and then the more I kept skating. I was like, man, I'm getting a little too old to be just riding the popsicle skateboards. I kind of wanted more of the old school cruisers, a little
Yeah.
wider, a little bit more. So I was like, well, the only way to do that is to either buy them, which again, we're talking about getting expensive again.
Yeah.
I was like, or I can make my own. So at this point, my wife and I moved to Cincinnati, and it's in the middle of the pandemic. And uh, I came across this group of dads called the Dad Skate Squad, and literally it started. It's exactly what it sounds like, right?
That's
I mean,
awesome. I
it
love
was
it.
this group of dads who had started with a few of them who were drinking beer one day, and they were in their garage, and they wanted to go on like a beer run or something. So they looked over, and their kids' skateboards were there, like, oh, let's ride this. And they're like, man, this is kind of fun. It grew out of that into this thing where it's like, we
Wow.
can't really socialize indoors, but we can all meet. We can, go out, meet somewhere in town. We just skate around town, and we'd go to like an outdoor like brewery or something afterward and grab a beer.
I love it.
And I moved to Cincinnati a year before the pandemic started, so like I still don't have, I didn't have a lot of friends. Most of my friends were, my in-laws, my wife's family, my wife's friends,
Yeah.
who I love them all dearly, but there's kind of that cultural difference.
Sure.
We don't necessarily have the same things in common, different music tastes, different
Yeah.
hobbies, things like that. So this was this group of like-minded. I ran some guys I call really good friends now. I met doing that, just skating around town, and
That's cool.
one of them, he's a welder, and I talked to him about my idea of building a press to press my own skateboards. And he was like, "Oh shit, I can come over and help you do that. I can get you the material at cost." So he came over. We built a press. I buy maple veneers from this shop in Southern Indiana, right across the street, right across the river from Louisville. And so I press the skateboards myself. I come up with the shape myself, hand cut them, hand shape them, hand sand them, and then I hand paint them all.
I love it.
Yeah,
Man.
it's turned into a fun little side gig, little hobby of mine. I told my wife, I was like, I'm not ever trying to like take this to the next
Blow up.
level or
Yeah.
anything. I would just like to sell enough for the hobby to pay for itself, because I'm going to keep making skateboards, and
And
there's only
enjoy
so
it.
much
Yeah.
room I have in my garage to put skateboards I've made. So, which is why you see about 8 of them in my office right now.
I love it, dude. That's so cool that you're able to get back into this, passion that you enjoy, and that you found a little tribe of dudes that like to do the same thing, man. That's really cool. And it totally sounds on brand for the Wes that I know.
Yeah. But yeah, man. So that's, when I was a kid, the skateboarding just kind of came naturally. It was one of those things. I got into like punk rock and that kind of subculture very, very early through
How old?
friends, middle school.
Yeah.
Probably probably 6th grade, 7th grade.
What kind of bands are we talking about?
So it was kind of a mix between, the punk of the time. So like Rancid, the Bouncing Souls, Hot Water music, bands like that were kind of, no effects, bands in the 90s that were kind of dominating the punk scene, not necessarily the pop punk stuff that was getting more plays, but kind of had a lot of the skateboard culture, and I mean they
Yeah,
just kind of overlapped, right? So
absolutely.
it was a mix between that and then early into high school, a friend of mine's dad, who I'm still close with. I ended up playing in bands with him and stuff. He got me into old school punk, like back in like the 70s, the 80s, the old stuff. So
Some really raw stuff.
yeah, it's kind of a mix between bands that if you listen to them now, you'd be like, I wouldn't call this punk rock.
Okay.
Bands like the Clash, which
Okay.
are kind of defined punk, but like aesthetically, musically, now you listen to it, you're like, wow, this. When I think punk, I think a lot more, you know, angst, fast, loud,
Right.
and that wasn't really them. But also bands from the 80s, that whole scene of punk that was, the Black Flags, the
Yeah.
bands like that were very in your face, hardcore
Yes,
punk
that's
rock.
kind of what I think of, and probably a lot of people think of that aren't like in the scene.
Oh yeah, and I mean I'm still a huge fan to this day. So yeah, so that getting into that kind of subculture, and then also having it flow over into skateboarding, was just kind of a natural thing for me. And again, I was fortunate that I had parents who were just like, yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
When did the drumming come into play?
That happened. So I've always been very interested in music. My dad's a hell of a musician.
Actually, I've got a quote here. I want to just say from your dad that was really
Yeah.
cool. Wes always enjoyed music, was always listening to it, went to bed to it. Don and Sue, he said, we are children of the 60s and 70s, so we were always, they grew up listening to Simon and Garfunkel, to the Beatles, to Crosby, Stills and Nash, and just music always playing in the
Hmm.
house.
And my dad would probably never say it, but he's a hell of a guitar player
Oh,
himself.
cool.
And so they got my brother and I piano lessons when we were young. I'm talking like elementary school. Well, my brother's 4 years older than I am, but I was, I think, in elementary school. And Brandon, he stuck with it for a few years, but I hung on for several years after that because I was always much more into it.
Yeah.
And then as my tastes change and I'm getting into kind of coming into my own, uh, there's not a whole lot of room for piano in punk rock. So
Right.
uh, I didn't really. I don't remember how. I think drumming was it just kind of came natural. I think I was always kind of banging on stuff,
Yeah.
and uh, I'm sure my dad would have liked me to pick up the guitar because he could have showed me a few things. But yeah, I picked up drums again. They were very supportive. They bought a drum kit. The guy who was giving me piano lessons at the time, uh, he was an all-around musician, all-around percussionist. So he showed me a few things on the drums, and
Yeah.
the rest. I mean, I think he might have showed me something for like an hour one day, and then the rest of it I just kind of picked up.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, that led to me being in bands for most of my childhood and adult life.
Yeah. Do you still dabble at all? Or do you have time? Probably don't have time anymore, do
I
you?
don't.
Yeah, dude.
I'd
Well,
like to. I think
sure.
when the kids get a little bit older, uh, that'll be something I get back into. But we were moving up to Cincinnati. Emily was just a few months pregnant when we moved. We found out we were pregnant in December and we were moved in March. And me bringing my drum kit up when we're getting the house ready for a new kid was not a priority. Not a whole lot of room to practice drumming with a sleeping infant.
Well, hopefully someday you could circle back to that in
That's
good
the
ways.
plan. That's the
Yep,
plan.
for sure. Well, I've always been curious about this because, not a typical baseball dude, but I felt like you loved baseball in your own way. So I would kind of love to hear how baseball kind of came into your life and you kind of the progressions from there. Let's start kind of like Little League and how'd that build for you?
Yeah. So, like I said, my dad was never that into sports, but I think baseball was the one that he always, leaned to more. And then my brother being 4 years older than I was, I mean, he's always had a love of sports in a way that never really transferred down to me. I always
Yeah.
loved playing the game, and I
Hmm.
loved competing. I loved being out in the field. For him, he loved that and more,
Yeah.
So I think my interest came from early on from following him,
Yeah.
and my childhood favorite, baseball players were always somebody on the team that, of his favorite team. I
Okay.
remember when he was younger, because Louisville, obviously, there's no professional teams in Kentucky. So in Louisville, you either are getting the Braves games, from
Yep.
TBS,
TBS. Yeah.
uh, or you're getting uh, Cubs games and St. Louis, maybe some Cincinnati in there.
Yeah.
So growing up, my brother was a Braves fan, and
Hmm.
so I was like, all right, I'll pick my favorite player from the team that he loves. And then it's a funny story of why he stopped loving the Braves. His favorite player growing up was David Justice.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you remember back when they used to do those like baseball card conventions, and like we'd go and like, some players would be there signing autographs and taking pictures.
You have a bad
Uh,
experience.
yeah, man. Apparently he was a douchebag.
Yeah, you never know. Don't meet your heroes, right?
Exactly. I don't remember it that well. I remember it solely from I can remember seeing the picture that we got with him, and
Yeah.
Dave Justice just not looking happy. But apparently, my brother overheard my dad like complaining, like, "Dude, you're making all this money just to sit here and take pictures, and you look so angry to be here." And that resonated with my brother, so he decided, "No, I'm no longer a Braves fan," and became a Cubs fan, and is diehard Cubs fan ever since.
David Justice, man.
Yeah, he is the reason that the Braves lost a fan in the early '90s. I'm sure he's the reason they lost multiple fans, but that was why the Cunningham household split.
We're done with the Braves.
Yeah, but no. So we baseball was the one that we always kind of gravitated towards.
Yeah.
We never really played football. I think I played 1 year of football, like.
Your dad said you played like tried it maybe for a year or something like that. That
Yeah,
wasn't
and
for
then
you.
I was it was several years after everybody else had already gotten into it,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, it just wasn't for me.
A little bit of basketball in there, maybe.
We grew up playing basketball. It was basketball and baseball were really the two. My brother really got into golf. I did for a while. But baseball was always the one that kind of, we really resonated with.
Yeah.
And through just being around it, I guess we both were on the better side.
Yeah.
We're both naturally athletic, I think. Which when in little league, that's really all it takes to be, to kind of separate yourself from the rest, is to just be a little bit more naturally inclined to athleticism versus,
Yeah.
other folks who were just there playing rec ball. Uh, yeah, we, played ball, had we'd make the all-star teams and things like that. And we both got into travel ball.
How old?
Oh, middle school for me.
Yeah.
I think around the same time for him.
Okay.
Um, and but I had a great experience playing travel ball. I was never the best on the team. Um, I probably wasn't even in the top 25%
Yeah.
of guys on the team. I played with some guys who were really, really talented. Some of whom burned out. Uh, but I always loved it. I loved being active. I loved being out there. I loved competing. I
So
loved
there was
winning.
a love for the game from a young age.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There. I always said it when I got older. I always explained to people when they asked, you're really into baseball. Who's your favorite team? I was like, I don't really watch sports.
Sports balls, right?
Yeah, it's the reason being, from an early age, I was like, when I'm there, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Exactly. Yep.
But the second, when I go home, I don't want to watch more of it. There's other things I want to do when I go home.
Yes.
But so yeah, there was always a very strong love of the game, playing the game.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, baseball and, summer they're just synonymous. My best my best memories growing up were, playing ball in the summer, spending, having those days where you keep winning in a tournament and you play like 4 games in a row. I'm sure the parents hated it, but as a kid, man, you
Yeah.
just love every minute of it.
Yeah. Love it. Cool, man. So I think we're getting a good picture of kind of like that you loved playing the game, but you weren't going to be the guy that was going to go home and watch baseball tonight or play baseball video games or things like that. You had other stuff that you wanted to think about, to worry about, to involve yourself in. That's really cool because a lot of times, later on you hear about people trying to get perspective on the game and having other
Mm-hmm.
things that occupy their mind. And it sounds like you were kind of set up like this from the beginning. So I really think this bodes well for you when we get further down the line. But
I think so too.
before we get any further, I've got some Don Cunningham quotes, and I'm going to cut them in half because some of them are going to be kind of up to high schoolish, and then we're going to get into some later when you do pro ball in college. So early on, Wes and Brandon ran around and fought like brothers do. I already said this one, but I'll say it again. Wes always enjoyed music, was always listening to it, went to bed to it. We're children of the 60s and 70s, so he was hearing Simon and Garfunkel to the Beatles, to Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Wes went more in the in-your-face punk route after that. Wes was very much into skateboarding when he was young, and he renewed some of that as an adult. We just touched on that. Perfect. This was cool. He said one time an aunt asked Wes why he worked so hard all the time, worked out so hard, and you said to be better than my brother. That's cool. And your brother's about 4 years older than you?
Yeah.
Right. And he went to Transylvania and was a pitcher in college, but your dad said that he was a pretty good hitter up until then as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
You
agree to that?
He was an all around. He's a good athlete. He still is.
Yep. Here we go. Played rec ball every summer, basketball in the winter. 1 year of football wasn't for him in high school. Wes played AAU, travel ball, that stuff. Wes doesn't have the patience for golf. I don't know why we got into this, but he just wants to hit it as hard as he can. And other people, if you have been going to this Murray State golf outing every year, right? I haven't been yet, but I always see the pictures, and it looks like you don't actually golf. You just every once in a while just take a big rip and just like kind of travel around in a golf cart. Is that what you do?
Man, so it started off me just showing up because I don't own golf clubs. It's hard to find. It's typically in a normal friend group. It's hard to find people with left-handed golf clubs to borrow.
Yeah.
In the baseball world, half the people are left-handed. But the first couple of years, man, I just wanted to get a golf cart, a cooler of beer, and just drive around. But it was like 3 years ago. I got guilted into it because the guys were like, "Man, we need one more for a foursome, or else they're going to stick us with somebody we don't know." Man, it's only $100. Fine. I'll buy in and I'll play. I'll borrow some clubs, and I've been playing every year since then. But it's definitely much more of a all right, who's on my team? You all realize we're not competing, right? We're just here to have some fun. I was like, I'm going to come out here with about 5 sleeve of balls, and I don't want to bring them home.
That's awesome. And okay, last quote, and then we've got a funny clip here. Wasn't any more gifted than anyone else really when he was little, but he was pretty fast. That's kind of what you said. Like, not like someone that they were going to be like, this guy is going to go on to be an All-American and drafted and play professional baseball. And it's cool to hear some of these stories and some of the guys that I've done that. It's not everyone is picked from 10 years old that they're going to the show. It's an interesting path sometimes where you ping pong around a little bit. All right, here we go. This is a funny clip. This is your dad. This one's called Competitive Spirit. Choo choo. Here we go.
And a lot of determination and his competitive spirit, even in recreational ball, came through. I can remember at one baseball practice when he was probably about 9 years old, maybe 10. I think he'd made an all-star team, and they were having a practice. And I got to the practice late, but I got there just in time to see him coming around the bases. Now, they were scrimmaging, so it was the same team. They were just they split up to scrimmage. And he coming around the bases and just laid out the catcher, a fellow teammate, because he was not going to be to the tune of, it was, I got so mad at him. I chased him. Everybody knew, oh my God, I hope he doesn't catch. We got home and I didn't even get out of the car before I had a call from the kid's dad. His mom was at the practice, And she got home and told her husband that Wes had laid this kid out. And I said, Wayne, I don't know what to tell you. I said, I'm sorry, I've gotten on him, but that's just shows you his competitiveness. It was
fiery.
When he was young, if he was playing to win.
There we go. What a great clip.
Man, the second that thing started, I knew that's the story he was going to. Oh man.
You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember because I remember that practice. We were practicing in, it was back in the day when there's only so many fields in the in the complex, so you'd kind of one team would take left field and kind of do their drills out there while another team had the infield. And we were out in the outfield running these drills, and I remember rounding third and taking the kid out, and I looked up. My dad had just got there, and I don't think I hesitated. I think I got right back up and just started running again, jumped the outfield fence. And I don't want to get it twisted. My dad was not it's not like I was running away from a beating or anything. He was not a violent man, but I just knew. I was like, oh crap, he saw it. I guess I forgot that he wasn't there the entire practice, because that probably would have dictated what I did. But it reminds me, I told you we played a little bit of recreational basketball and stuff. And I don't think my parents could tell you a single thing about my basketball prowess other than I think I hold the record for fouling out faster than anyone else. Because I would, something would go wrong, and then that temper would come out. And I'm like, all right, well, screw it. And I would just, I think I appreciate the term competitive spirit a lot more than, just blatant anger and losing control of himself.
Isn't that a much softer term, competitive?
I know
spirit?
I guess it takes the love of a father to word it that way.
I've got a real competitive spirit problem.
Yeah, right.
I got to go to competitive spirit classes.
Oh man, I appreciate that wording, Dad. I appreciate it.
All right, a few more quotes here, and then we'll move on. Your dad said I've always admired his no apologies attitude. This is who I am. I will second that 100%. Good grades, great work ethic. That's just in him. He's that way. This was interesting. If he's going to be your friend, you can count on him. But if he has high standards for friendship as well. I've heard him write people off for something he didn't like, and he said, I don't really play that shit. That's enough of that, and we'll drop him, and that's who he is, and that hasn't changed. So I get that big time too, dude. Life is too short to be, messing around with people that don't respect you or your time. So
I think I learned that early. And there are a couple instances that come to mind, not necessarily the ones my dad is referencing. I think I have an idea of some of the instances that he's talking about. But like I said, I came from a great household. My parents were all about love, support. I had a very kind of diverse childhood. So the elementary school I went to in Louisville, has since closed its doors, but it was downtown. We lived on the east end of town, and the elementary school I went to was in downtown Louisville. Mm-hmm. And it was very racially diverse, and I never thought twice about that. That was the kind of house that my parents raised me. I remember my dad taking me to birthday parties in the projects and areas of town that, as an adult, some people might say are not safe. But he was like, my friends, it's my son's friend. We're going. It's a birthday party. Like, what? I'm not going to teach him that there's places that we shouldn't go, or there's places that we don't belong, or anything like that. And that
we're
was
above. Yeah,
exactly. And that was how I was raised.
Yeah.
And
wow.
So some of the early instances, I remember playing high school ball, and some teammates of mine who I would otherwise say were friends would mouth off or make some inappropriate comments, whether it was, elitist or racist or anything like that. And
that's not something Wes stands for. And I've always known you to be someone that will stand up and say something in a room if someone says something like that.
And and I pride myself on that. And I hope to raise my kids to be the same.
You should.
But yeah, I appreciate that you know, having my dad in my life, obviously for my entire 36 years of existence, uh, it makes me feel good to know that he's picking up on these character traits that I,
Yeah,
value in myself. I'm glad to know that these were, highlights from early on.
absolutely. And I shared it with you I shared it. Um, I sent you the phone call that I had with your dad, and I tell all
Hmm.
my guests, I always send them the phone call with their dad because it's usually pretty dang special. And like usually baseball is kind of a father son thing that they kind of do together a lot and whatnot. So someday, you know, I hope Don is in good health for a long time, but someday he won't be here, and I think it'll be special for you to be able to hear that phone call someday. So
I completely agree.
really
I
special.
held off on listening to it until
Yeah,
after we
for sure.
talked, and I'm excited to kind of dive in.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess now we're kind of at moving on to high school here at Eastern High School in Louisville, playing under the Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame coach, John Morris. I'd love to hear kind of how high school went for you and your progressions here. I've got some of your numbers. Yeah, let's just start off. How do you feel like your freshman year went starting off at Eastern? And this is like a storied program, right? They're known for strong baseball.
Uh, they are. I mean, they were somewhat known. I mean,
Okay.
the more so now.
Okay.
John Morris had a lot to do with that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, he was just inducted into the Kentucky High School Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I looked back at because they posted his numbers with that, and I was like, "Holy crap! I didn't realize those are some solid numbers."
Yeah.
His first year was my brother's senior year, so it was the
Okay.
year before I showed up. Actually, I take that back. In Kentucky, you can play on your high school team in seventh and eighth grade
Yeah. He
when you're in
mentioned
middle
you coming up
school.
in eighth grade.
I joined the team in eighth grade, so I was technically on the same team. My brother was a senior. I was in eighth grade.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, there's freshmen, there's JV, and there's varsity. I was nowhere near the varsity level at that eighth grade point, but that was Coach Morris's first year. The next year, as a freshman, I remember I played freshman and JV, and I dressed pretty often with varsity. But
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned before, I've always been pretty quick, and I
Yeah.
think that was in large part the reason that I dressed. I would come in, I would pinch run occasionally,
Yeah.
um, and steal a few bags, and then from sophomore year through senior year, varsity the rest of the way, and we were fortunate enough to have great players every year. I mean, my senior year, I think we graduated with 12 seniors, 7 of whom played college ball.
Wow. Yeah.
At all levels. I mean, everywhere from uh, NAIA, JUCO through SEC,
Mm-hmm.
D1 schools. So
Absolutely. And I've got some John Morris quotes and clips here that I think it'd be fun to kind of play off. So anytime you hear a quote you want to jump on, you think there's more context to it, just interrupt me and I'll stop and we'll jump into story time. Okay.
yeah,
I've got
I'm
a couple
down.
of cool clips here and some quotes here. Really fun talking to this guy. Like I said, loved his accent. I love a good, like thick Kentucky accent, and like his is a good one. Anyway, this guy was awesome too. So, got Wes as an eighth grader, knew his family well, knew his older brother, Brandon. They are a first-class family, a great family. Knew I was going to have a player when I got him. More of an outfielder when I got him in eighth grade, but he was willing to fill a need. We were very strong his junior and senior year, won over 30 games each year. This is a cool clip I got, and this is kind of like, it's on some of your attitude. It's called I'll Do It, Coach. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
And I need somebody who may can kind of work in catching. I remember Wes smiling. He said, "Man," he said, "Coach, I'll catch if that's what you need. That's what it takes." And nobody else was willing to do that besides him. And
Really?
he just said, "Yeah, I'll do whatever it takes," because I tried to sell it on, hey, look, maybe you can by your freshman sophomore year, have a little varsity time, or maybe even start in varsity, but if you're going to play outfield, it may take a while. And Wes said, whatever you need and whatever I can do. And so he had never called up to that point. And so basically he was very raw, and he really worked hard and did what he needed to do. And by his sophomore year, he was a starting varsity catcher. And he started as a catcher for the varsity his sophomore, junior, and senior year. But he just had the best attitude, best work ethic, and probably in all my years there, I can count on one hand the top guys that had that attitude and work ethic, and he was right there at the top. And he's just an ultimate competitor.
Love that, right?
Yeah, wow, that's awesome to hear him say that. And I do remember that kind of him approaching me about that kind of stuff. Because I mean, I'm sure it was like that when you were growing up. Little league and on to rec ball and things. Everybody wants to be the star pitcher. Everybody wants to be the shortstop.
Yep.
And I was as we will touch on later, defense was never my strong suit in baseball. And I think from an early point, I kind of, like Coach Morris said, I was much more of a, if you need me to catch, man, I'll catch.
That's a great attitude to have. Yeah.
And I remember as I started to, progress, I would make little games out of it. Cause like I said, I was quick. So there were times I would try to beat the guy to first.
I could see that happening.
And I tell you, I could have definitely used Coach Mac's level of coaching to get me in the where I needed to be as a catcher, because we all know Coach Mac was a top tier pitching coach.
And just like a little side note, Coach Mac had at one point one of the premier kind of defensive catching videos out there, instruction videos, and was known and is respected as a very high level catching instructor throughout the nation still, I believe.
100%. I mean, he knows that position better than anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as Coach Morris said, I was raw, but I was willing to try, and I was willing to, do my best to make the position work. I never had had somebody sit down and kind of show me what to do and what not to do with catching. I just kind of tried to figure it out and make kind of emulate some of what I saw other people doing.
Yeah. And did you ever develop a love for catching, or was it more just like, I want to be on the field and this is what they need, so I'm going to do this?
I think the love of that position didn't necessarily come out of the position itself. I kind of established myself as a leader at Eastern junior and senior year. And I think being a position like the catcher it's well suited for that kind of leadership role, that
absolutely.
kind of captain mentality, right? So not only, am I involved in calling the pitching game, but it's the bringing the team out to talk at the mound. It's much more of a singular position. And so I always loved that about it. Because like I said, I did kind of fashion myself a little bit of a captain, for lack of a better term, but
leader.
The leader on the team. If something was bothering the team and we needed to go to Coach Morris about it, I would step up and I would do it. That's kind of how I prided myself. And I think that's where my love of the catching position came from.
I totally get that. Moving on, I got some more quotes here. I'll just keep rolling. Hit in the middle of the lineup for us. We had multiple D1 guys on that roster, a lot of college guys. You already kind of talked to that. Was great at getting on base, bunts, walks, any way to get on base, anything to help the team. Ultimate competitor, always found ways to win. I'm at another clip here, and he basically kind of talked about how you were like a coach on the field for him. So kind of just rolling right along with what you were saying there. So here we go. Coach John Morris. Wes was a coach on the field.
One of the things with Wes, in all the years I was there, and as I said, we had a very good team, he was probably my best, quote-unquote, coach on the field that we ever had, because he would hold his teammates accountable to do things, and things that I went over. Sometimes there's teams that just don't have that, and he would make sure things got done, and if it didn't, he took care of it. Now, Wes was a big guy that strong guy that lived in the weight room, and when he came in, he wasn't, but when he hit that weight room and he got big and strong, and he was always happy-go-lucky and easy to get along with, and people just loved his personality. But man, he was a competitor. I remember one time, in the dugout and stuff, when this other, I forget, the junior or senior, wasn't doing what they're supposed to, I didn't have to say anything. He took the guy by the collar and put him up against the wall, and had some choice words and said, "Hey, look, man, this is what we gotta have out of you, and we're not playing around. We're not doing that. If we're gonna win, this is what's gonna happen."
Love it. I love that.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm hearing Coach Morris say that, and I'm remembering these stories, and I'm remembering that mentality. You're kind of putting yourself back in the mindset that you were at that time, and I'm hearing him tell the story, and my first thought was like, man, I wasn't some just kind of square in the dugout, was I? But like. No, but I think it comes back to that, and he touched on it, that I was, I would cut up quite a bit, but like,
yeah,
I think it kind of goes back to that mentality of like, when you're there, you're there 100%.
Yeah, totally.
And I remember, and I'm sure he didn't talk about it in your all's discussion, but I remember getting on Coach Morris's nerves a few times at practice, cutting up and acting like idiots, as high school players do, and
high school, yeah,
and especially as like that leader on the team, kind of leading the charge of being, a clown at times. But when the game was, when the game was on the line, when we're, in the dugout, then you're all business.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, and it's just dawning on me that he probably would have been a good person to talk to, but one of my childhood best friends, he played on our team in high school. Didn't play a whole lot, but he is the only person that I've ever played with who could control my temper.
Really?
Yeah. He, like I said,
what was the secret? So he's the West Whisperer?
Yeah, man. He's probably my oldest friend, Thomas Hicks, and I remember there'd be times when I would just. I'd be down on myself, or I'd be pissed off about something else, and he'd just come up, man, and he'd look me in the eye, or he'd like give me a bear hug, or he'd use any number of tricks that he had in his bag to calm me down and get me back in the right mindset. Wow. And I wish I could have taken him with me. But
Wes, that's kind of fascinating to me, because I always thought, while you did, I remember, there'd be like short outbursts after like a strikeout or something like that. I thought you were really good at dumping it. Like dumping it, you would let it go, and then you were like, by the time your next at bat came around, like I don't think you had any memory of it. You just flushed it. You were so amazing at compartmentalizing stuff like that. So you obviously got better at that as time went on.
Well, so I think a lot of it has to do with having somebody on the field, because at this point in high school, I kind of so I used to have a bad temper in all aspects of life, and part of that came from being too competitive.
Yeah.
In things that there's no need to be competitive about, right? And I remember it came to head once when I was in like freshman or sophomore year of high school. It was like some PE class or something, and I was getting overly competitive about some nonsense that we were doing, and it almost escalated to a fight.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of thinking back on it, being like, why the hell did I get so worked up about something that doesn't mean a damn thing?
Oh, well said.
And from that point on, I kind of, as you said, I kind of was able to compartmentalize my.
Yeah, you're amazing at that.
My temper by, all right, I can be competitive in certain aspects, and baseball was that outlet. I can be competitive when I'm in baseball. And so at this point, when my buddy was kind of able to talk me off a ledge at times, it was kind of feeding into that same mindset of like, all right, you got mad, you dealt with it, now let's move on. And so it was just kind of this, we all grow and change so much in high school. And I think I'm fortunate that I matured a lot in that regard. The temper was always there, and the losing it never stopped.
But you learned how to control it.
Exactly. I learned how to
channel it,
and to move on.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, nothing prepares you more for being a dad than being able to control your temper. As with small kids, man, They'll test you.
Yes, they will, buddy. Yes, they will. That was great. Moving on, I got some more John Morris quotes here. A fiery guy. When he said things, people listened. He was a true coach on the field. Had a really hard time getting schools to look at him his senior year. We'll get into that. Eastern and Western Kentucky said they weren't interested, which is hysterical kind of now looking back. We thought he was going to go to Transylvania like your brother. Had a really good regional tournament that got him noticed. Isn't it crazy that nobody wanted him out of high school? This is him asking the question. He goes, I couldn't get anyone to take a look at him at the D1 level. Goes to show you don't let others determine your worth or your hopes and dreams. Powerful.
Wow.
It was so gratifying to see him turn into what he did. It was a true I told you so to all those coaches who didn't want him. He got really excited when he said that too. A good kid, a great person. Wes made his own breaks, made his own luck. People are drawn to Wes. His personality, his big smile, so kind, easy to get along with, hardworking. I second all that. Always the goofster, prankster, playing jokes. So that kind of concludes my John Morris quotes here. And you said something about you were worried you were a square. I don't think anyone has ever thought you were a square.
Well, I appreciate that. Oh man.
But I've got some of your stats here too. So like, looks like sophomore year, these are progressions too. Like 314, 4 doubles. Junior year, 341, 5 doubles. Senior year, 400, 4 home runs. So each year getting a little better, getting a little stronger. Anything notable that you want to talk about during your high school career here, or like when you started getting into weightlifting and stuff? I mean, he certainly mentioned you were a strong kid.
So that was, I think that was a level of, I got interested, once we were old enough for them to introduce us to the weight room, I took to it, and, it's a way to push myself. Why wouldn't I want to, pursue that and to push myself as much as I could.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was a way to kind of slowly prove yourself. You have direct comparisons with people lifting next to you. You can see how hard somebody else is going in the weight room. And to me, especially back then, I mean, that played a lot into how serious I thought somebody, took the game or took their dedication to it. When I was, I remember once there was a guy who was a football player at my high school, and we were in, I think they called it like advanced PE or some nonsense. It was basically weightlifting. Yeah. And this dude was a big dude, and he was doing just some stupid weights, bent over rows. And I walked over, he was like, you can't do that. And I did one. And I don't think I should have been able to do it, but like, it was one of those things. It was like, you're not gonna tell me I can't do it. I'm gonna try.
Here we go.
And I think so that was all developing, in high school. And like, I've said earlier, and other people have said, like, I was never the best one on the field. I was
not yet
good. I was good middle of the lineup. I'd get on base. I was fast, and I'd try hard. But some of the guys we had on our team were great. I mean, like he said, we had several guys who went to, big D1s.
Yeah.
I think just kind of, this is that period where I'm still trying to kind of figure out my game. And really kind of do anything I could to kind of help the team out. Because I wasn't going to come in and necessarily always be the, one with the game-changing hit or the, walk-off home run or anything. At this point, I was just trying to help the team win. But yeah, you mentioned it, man. I wasn't getting looks from anybody.
That's crazy.
I really wanted to go to Eastern Kentucky because a couple of my good friends in high school were going there. Friends, not baseball friends. A lot of the guys I hung out with were, kind of my punk rock friends, guys I played music with, and I kind of ran around with different crowds.
Yeah.
And a couple of those guys were going to EKU, and I really wanted to go. I did, the showcases, and no interest.
Wow.
No interest at all. I think I only went on a couple formal visits. Transy, their coach came and saw me play and wanted me to come there. I think a small NAIA school, another D3 school. I'm drawing a blank on the name. And then Bellarmine, a D2 in Louisville.
Yeah.
Real solid school. that was the best offer I had going into the summer after my senior year of high school. But at that point, I was at this crossroads in life. I was like, I want to keep playing ball. There's that competitive level in me. It's like, well, some of my friends are going to play ball. Like, I want to go play. I love the game. I'm not ready to hang them up yet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm 18. I don't want to, it's college. I want to get out of the city I'm from. And I didn't necessarily want to stay in Louisville.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this inner turmoil of, this is your best chance to play ball. Do you, go play at the D2 and stay in Louisville, or do you maybe hang them up and just be a student somewhere?
Man, yeah.
And thankfully, the choice. Thankfully, I was given a third option.
Crazy, and when I talked to Baldini, he even said you talked about even like maybe traveling the country and playing music or doing something like that too. Like that was on the table too. You kind of were up in the air of like,
Yeah, a buddy of mine and I, and this would probably be news to my parents, but we had a mapped out plan. We were just gonna kind of take off and figure it out. Now, of course, fast forward to the 21st century, to the 2020s, and you've got all these young kids on social media who live out of vans. Like it's just like the next cool thing. But back in 2006, we had no plans, no business trying to do what we thought we were going to do. But that was very much on the table in my life.
Yeah. I think we're at a cool place here where I've got a couple interesting clips. One would be Brian Baldini, your high school teammate, college. He played 2 years at Murray and then finished up at 2 years of Northern Kentucky. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and here I got to do it. Always loved saying his name. It's Amiya Baldini.
Yes.
Love that guy. He's a talented
Baldini.
pitcher too. So here we go. Let me play this Baldini clip, and this is kind of like the fibers of how you ended up at Murray State here. So then we can just kind of riff off that if you're cool with that.
Oh, for sure.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, Coach Y. Yeah, he when he was recruiting me, he ended up saying like, "Hey, we're actually interested in a catcher. Do you know anybody?" And I was like, "You should check out Wes Cunningham, our catcher. Hits from the left side, fast as hell, can hit real well, so you should check him out." And as I say, rest is history. He ended up coming on over to Murray and doing what you said he did, basically kind of killing it.
There's Baldini. Do you want to comment on that, or do you want me to go to Coach Mack and then we can talk?
Hey, go to Coach Mack, and then we'll bring it full circle.
Here comes Coach Mack himself.
Yes, sir.
Mack attack.
Wes was a unique guy in a lot of ways. I mean, he was so athletic, so powerful, so fast, so explosive.
Mm-hmm.
But he was kind of raw.
Very.
And so that was how, those were things that we had to discuss and try to weigh and compare and all that. But yeah, the initial stages, Coach Wachowski gets the credit for that.
Pretty cool.
And there's that. I'd never thought of using that word, but I think that's the best way to describe my early baseball. Just raw.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
I didn't have really any dedicated coaches, or I didn't hone certain skills. Now, late in high school, I did take some hitting lessons with a guy who actually has some impressive chops. We ended up facing. He was the head coach at Moorhead.
Cool.
Our last couple of years, Jay Sorg. He played some pro ball. He was a scout for the Reds for a while, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I took some hitting lessons with him, but other than that, I was raw. And
it's a great way to describe it.
Yeah. And so, it's summertime after senior year of high school, and my next step is just unknown at this point. And, I'd be lying if I.
Are you panicking at this point, or like, man, I got nowhere to go? Like, dude, what am I doing? Yeah.
I'm sure I looked calm on the surface, but yeah. And I think a lot of it, came from that very real realization that like, all right, if I hang them up now, they're hanging up for good. You
Yeah,
know, like
right.
it's like taking a break and then coming back,
Right.
which you know some people can do, but I knew that if I hung them up, I wouldn't be coming back.
Yeah.
But also there was this like, man, some of my really good buddies I just played college, I played high school ball with, who we were teammates for 4 years, and I considered us equals. These guys are going on to play D1. Like I feel like I can do that. I know in my heart I can do that.
Oh, I love it. That's
And
perfect.
yeah, and so there's this, there's this inner turmoil. And like Baldini said, he signed early with Murray.
Yeah.
Him and one other guy we played high school ball with. They both signed early with D1 schools. And I remember Coach Y came to that Region 7 tournament that Coach Morris talked about. Coach Y came there.
Yeah.
And I had a good game. And I think I actually had a decent game catching. I think I threw, caught a couple guys stealing, had a couple hits. And, it's early on into the summer that panic is starting to set in. And then I get an invitation to come down to Murray. And, if you would have asked me a year before where Murray was, I've grown up in Kentucky my whole life, but Louisville might as well be its own, island in the north part of the state.
Right.
The only reason I knew where Murray was or even knew there was a school there was because Baldini had signed early. I didn't know. For those listening who aren't familiar, Murray's about as far in the western tip of Kentucky as you can get, right on the Tennessee border.
Yeah.
And so I got the offer to come down and do a school visit. And I was ecstatic.
I'd love to hear about this. Yeah, I'd love to hear about your visit.
I obviously I was like jumping at the chance, like, yes, let's do it. So my parents and I piled in the car, drove the 3.5-hour trip down along the Western Kentucky Parkway that I would eventually become so familiar with.
Yeah.
And we got to Murray, and Murray was a ghost town. Keep in mind, this is the summertime.
Summer, right.
I hear all these fun stories of people doing their visits and like getting to hang out with the team and
partying,
and I remember doing that with like recruits when I was at school, but like that was not it for me. I showed up and it is a ghost town.
Were there any players there at all?
No.
Oh wow.
We drove around and remember Coach Mac's big green van?
I do.
Yeah, we drove around the campus in that, toured the facilities, did all this, that, and the other. And like I remember we ended up down in Coach Mac's office, and I guess him and Wyatt kind of already had their internal discussion, and he was like, all right, well, it's a little late in the year, but here's what I can offer you. And he offered me a small scholarship, and he's like, we can offer you a spot on the team. Here's a small scholarship to help. He's like, I'm sure you want to think it over. So just, think it over and give me a call back and let me know, what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh, thank you, sir, for the opportunity, got back in the car with my folks, and, immediately me and my parents start talking like, well, what do you think you're going to do? I was like, what the hell do you mean? What do I think I'm going to do? This is the only offer I have. I was like, of course I'm taking it. And for those unfamiliar with the Murray region, to get back on any kind of actual interstate, you're on 641 for about 30 minutes to get back to 24. And I remember I called Coach Mac before we got to 24. So in that 30-minute stretch along 641, I called him. I was like, Coach, I've made my decision. Like, I'm ready. Like, I'm committing. Let's make it happen.
That's beautiful.
And yes, I mean, I remember it, kind of playing it cool, like as an adult, you feel like you have to do it pretty often, hide how interested you are. Well, this was like kind of my first foray into that of like, oh, thanks, sir. I'll have to weigh my options and get back to you. And then
what options?
I get in the car with my parents, like, holy shit, he actually wants me.
I can't believe this.
I was like, I'm coming. So yeah, I mean, man, the rest was history. I got home, I was ecstatic. I, told Baldini, told my friends. We did a little signing party, where we got together with some of my high school teammates, and at that point, like I finally felt right, like,
what a relief.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't settle. I'm glad I didn't, just write everything off but I held out and at this point I could not have been more just eager you know?
Perfect. And it's so cool because it's like, this ends up being like the right place for you to thrive. Who knows if you would have gone somewhere else, like would it have happened the same way? I've got a clip here where your dad's going to essentially echo the same thing you just said, but I'd love to hear his words on it. Can I play that real quick?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Cool. Here we go. Don, Murray visit.
And we went down for a visit after Brian told Coach Mack. Coach Mack invited us down. We drove down to Murray State, as I remember, and we're down there, and he took us around for a nice tour and sat down, talked in his office, and said, "This is what I can do, and give it some thought and let me know something." And we started on our way back home from Murray State, and we again started saying, "Well, Wes, Transie's closer," and he said, "Dad," he said, "here's a guy that wants me to come play. I don't want to go to Transy. I want to come here. If this guy wants," I said, both Sue and I both, "You're right, Wes. This is where you want to be. This is where he wants you. Call him up." I don't even think we had gotten out of town. I said, "No, give him a call. Do you want to go? Let's go."
This is such a great way that you start your Murray career, man. It's like romantic in a way.
Oh man, it certainly was. And, I'm getting kind of giddy thinking back on it, man. Like,
right? That time of your life.
It was,
what a moment.
Because honestly, I think I was lying to myself a little bit at the time about the panic that I was feeling, because as an 18-year-old, I'm untouchable. I got the whole world in front of me. I've got it all figured out. But, and, once I made that decision to come to Murray, and, that's when things clicked. And that's when I was like, all right, I finally have, a way forward. I finally have a path that everything else will fall into place now that I have a path. Before I was just rudderless, I'm just floating around out here. Like, where am I going to go? And then now it's like, all right, I got a path. Now it's time to, kind of figure it out.
I have a path. Oh man, that might be the title of this episode. That was great. Let me hit a couple Baldini quotes, and then we're gonna move on to Murray State time, buddy. Man,
yes, sir.
Oh, buddy, this is like I've got so many awesome things for us, and like some of these guys just gave us some hysterical, some touching stuff. It's just gonna be awesome. But back to Baldini here. Wes has one of the coolest stories because up until his senior year of high school, I don't think he ever even knew he wanted to play college baseball. Wes had a ton of interest outside of baseball. And anything he tries, he eventually gets pretty darn good at. Skateboarding, drumming, baseball, school. Always liked to be against the norm to some degree. Senior year was talking about touring the country with his buddies, playing music. We already touched on that. With no plan, just going to go. Figure it out.
Yep.
The guy has no fear in anything he did. He took that into hitting. It didn't matter the count. Wes did not care. What the hell? Okay, so this was like, so Baldini left when you really exploded. Like he went from like really good your sophomore year to like, who's this guy? And so I asked him kind of like, what was it like for him to see it from afar because he left? And he said, what the hell is going on? Wes is exploding. Just so happy for him. He said he made it to your Hall of Fame induction, and that was really special, really cool. Family friends with the Cunninghams. Beyond crazy how it went. So there's our Baldini stuff.
Yeah, man. And to this day, I love Brian. What
a great guy.
He lives right across the river in Northern Kentucky from me. He's in the greater Cincinnati area. We see each other every now and then. I was actually just texting him not long ago. He wanted some thoughts on his first tattoo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You'd be the guy to know. Yeah. Talk to you about that.
I sent him to my buddy's shop in Louisville.
Okay.
But yeah, man, he showed up. We had the complete opposite, stories of our arrival at Murray. He shows up as an early signee and began that first season as our Friday starter. He was one of our weekend starters.
Absolutely.
And he was somebody like yourself who was plagued by injuries and, never started off really strong, had some injuries happen and never quite got back to where he was.
Yeah.
And then, he ended up transferring to Northern Kentucky and he had a great rest of his career there. One of our other high school friends pitched 4 years at Northern Kentucky. Great D2 program. But yeah, I never even thought that putting two and two together that, Baldini saw my sophomore year, which was wildly different
So different. I mean,
than senior year.
yeah, I didn't get to, I was only privy to your first 2 years. So I only,
Mhm.
you know, I know of your wild junior and senior years through stats, through some videos, through obviously talking to guys. Like, I understand how baseball works, but that, yeah, I imagine that I was feeling the same thing from afar. Like, what is happening? This is Wes
Yeah.
Cunningham. That was our bullpen catcher our freshman year. Like, what?
Yeah. Oh man.
Well,
But yeah, Baldini is still to this day one of my good friends. Our parents are best friends.
yeah, that's what he said.
He moved to Louisville from New York, like 8th grade,
Okay.
and him and I immediately hit it off. Played ball together from then on, and I've said this multiple times. You know, he's the reason I ended up at Murray, and
Yeah.
I think Calhoun, who you mentioned earlier, who was drafted the year before I was, had a very similar story that, you know, I don't think he had a lot of interest out of high school. And then one of his best friends, high school teammate T.O., said, "Hey, y'all should check this guy out." And,
That's how it went
fast
down. I
forward
didn't even know
4
that.
years. Yeah.
Wow.
Fast forward 4 years and, he's getting drafted.
Yeah. And, arguably one of the greatest pitchers in Murray State history. Like,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
decal shoved. Like, that dude was a professional.
Yeah, he was something else, man. Talk about somebody keeping his composure. That dude just walked out there and he was like, "I'm going to throw this to you. You see if you can hit it."
Yeah.
He's like, if you hit it, I'll move on. But
I love Decal so much. He's like, is there not a more stereotypical, like, goofy lefty pitcher than Decal? Like, he is, like, if you look that up in the dictionary, there's like Decal, like a goofy look on his face staring at you.
Dude, 100%, man.
Dude, let me tell you this. When I go back and I call these guys and I, record the interviews and then I go back and get clips and quotes. When I called Decal, I was texting him. I said, "Hey, you got time for this interview today?" He was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Call me now." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I called him. He was doing his, so he's a UPS delivery driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or delivery guy. He was doing his route while I was interviewing him. And I was about to be like, "Dude, let's just do this at another time when you can concentrate more." But then I thought, this is the most Decal thing in the world, that he is doing his route while I'm interviewing him. And like halfway through, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, here you go. Sign for this, sir." He'd say hi to some customer and then he'd answer the question. And I love that.
Yeah,
kid.
man. He was special. He still is. And he's one of the guys that kind of keeps everybody somewhat connected. Thankfully in the world that we live in now, it's easy to stay connected via text message, phone calls, social media, all that. But Decal, man, and part of it's because he's just driving around all day and he's calling folks, he's Snapchatting people, and but he was somebody who you wouldn't know it on the surface. He came off as just this goofball, falling asleep on the leg press machine in the weight room.
Yes.
And but like he was the heart and soul of the team that year, man.
Yeah.
We'd go out our junior year or my junior year, we'd go out and, we'd have the doubleheader on Saturdays. And we're like, all right, we've got one W coming in from Calhoun.
Yeah.
We just need to give him a couple runs and he'll take it from there. And he still acts as kind of the intermediary and kind of the leader among everybody, keeping everybody in touch and never letting an inside joke go by the wayside.
That's the truth. Love that guy. He's hilarious.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get into some more Decal stories as
for sure
things unfold here. But man, showing up freshman year, I would love to hear kind of what your thoughts are. I have lots of thoughts from other people about you when you showed up.
Oh, I'm sure.
And dude, I'll just start off with my own impression. And I remember, like you walking into the locker room, and it was your roommate at the time, or for like a week or two.
Yeah,
was a guy named Blake Rust.
Yes.
You guys were both pretty heavily tattooed for 18-year-olds, and you had the shaved head, and I was just like, who is this friggin' guy? I think a lot of people had that kind of thought. I would love to hear your thoughts on showing up at Murray State and what your first experiences were, and just it's a great place.
Yeah, man. So yeah, since Baldini signed early, he was assigned a roommate already. Him and KT ended up rooming together. And since I signed so late, I think it was a wonder that they even found another baseball player for me to room with. But as we will come to find out, he was not a baseball player.
He was a football player, if you remember.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
That's what he said. But I showed up, moved my stuff in. You have that pretty stereotypical college moving into the dorm room experience. And then I remember we had, oh, dude, it's so exciting. You move in, it's like, all right, and this was the older Murray dorms, so like they were kind of a little bit more, homey. They were nice and decent sized. And
which dorm were you in?
Franklin.
Yep.
Yeah, the original Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
This is before before college dormitory architecture just moved to giant towers with no windows.
Yeah.
So I moved, and like all the baseball players were in the same dorm. And I remember we went to like a baseball event or something where we all kind of was a meet and greet. And yeah, I was rocking a cut off shirt with my tattoo. And Blake had, I think at the time I think it might have looked like he had more tattoos, or maybe it was just chaotic. I don't remember.
I think his were just more spread out and chaotic.
But like, I remember showing up and I was like, oh God, people are going to think we're like the Bash Brothers from like Mighty Duck, dude. Like, and like, I could tell him and I were not going to jive from the get-go, dude. Like, we could not have been more like opposite. Like, he's just this kind of country ghetto, and I'm this, city punk rocker. And I mean, he never stopped talking. Oh, it was that shitty rap song, Getting Some Head. And it was just like that. I'm pretty sure his phone was the only thing he brought to the dorm room. I remember I had to
brought nothing.
Yeah, I had to put I had to give him like a login to my laptop because I was a nice guy, and I was like, well, you need a computer. But I mean, like, the only thing he brought up besides some clothes was a phone that I woke up to every morning, getting some head, getting some head. And I was like, oh,
that's
my
how you
God.
Start your day.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, this is starting my day off right. But I remember going to like the first team event, and part of me was like, I feel like I'm getting lumped in with this clown.
Yeah.
But then but then the other side of it, man, and like, I don't think it really gets, or people forget about it, like how much a body changes between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
So like you go from a big fish in a small pond in high school where, you're top of the class, big guy, one of the best, one of the leaders of the team. And then you get to college, it's like, oh, these guys are athletes. These guys are jacked.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing you firsthand, and I was like, dude, this guy's got like man muscles. I feel like I still have baby fat, like, and like, there was definitely this kind of, there's this eagerness, but also kind of an arrogance. As an 18-year-old, most 18-year-olds are going to be pretty arrogant. You're kind of showing up to college. You're like, man, I've made it. I'm ready to hit the ground running. And then you kind of get put in check when you show up with the rest of the team. You're like, oh, these guys, this is my team. And that's kind of the realization you come to slowly. It's like, oh, at first you show up, you're kind of awestruck. You're like, oh, these guys are great. These guys are much better than I am. But then it's like, man, I'm on their team. Like, this is cool. I'm a part of this team.
Yep. It is special.
It's just kind of this wild mix of emotions that none of which really makes sense together. So you're just trying to figure it all out. But and then you're trying to do all of this in Murray State, which relatively small. If there wasn't a school there, it'd be considered like a retirement village.
Right.
But
perfect time. KT meeting Wes. You ready?
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
KT was absolutely sparkling during these interviews. It was so fun catching up with him. Man, I love that guy. He was my locker mate for my 2 years there next to me.
I love KT.
Love KT. Here we go.
Gets there and walking in the hallway, and I don't remember if it was Coach Mack or another coach, but they're kind of doing their rounds, making sure guys are checking in and doing their thing. And the first person I bump into is Wes Cunningham. And Wes Cunningham in those days was sleeveless cutoff shirt, tuxedo pants, which that wasn't new, and a completely shaved head, and not the tattoo ensemble that he has now, but enough to peek through the arms. And like maybe you said in the intro, Wes was a different cat, certainly eclectic personality. But so I see this image of Wes, and I know him from nothing, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this clown?
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, big guy, strong guy, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's funny. So we briefly meet, and then it might be that first night on campus, and if not, very early on. Wes invites me to go play a poker game with some of his kind of high school buddies that he knew were also there. I did end up winning that poker game, which maybe was a good thing or a bad thing. But ever since then, I had a unique bond, and then certainly grew as players together, but friends for sure. And we can certainly get into that as we go.
Cool clip by KT there.
Oh yeah, man. I remember that meeting, because you're in the middle of moving into the dorms, and the coaches are there making sure everybody's getting settled. It's not a big dorm, and they're trying to introduce you to all the other baseball players, and it was overwhelming. But him and I think, like he said, we developed a unique bond through our 4 years. We were roommates the last 2, and I do remember the poker game, one of the first nights, and because I had some high school friends who went to Murray. A lot of them left eventually, but yeah, man, I'm sure I gave off a very different a feel to people than he mentioned the dress pants. Yeah, man, I rocked the hell out of dress pants.
You want to go into that now?
I guess it's as good.
We're going to talk about it. It's coming up. So let me just lead you here. I've always known everyone that knows Wes. If you've ever spent any time with Wes, this man doesn't wear jeans, or at least used to not wear jeans, and you hated jeans, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't like jeans. I remember you saying that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the last time I wore blue jeans.
Yeah, and so you just had an assortment of like dress pants, or like tuxedo pants and pinstripe pants and like suit pants, and that's what you would wear. How did this start? Man. How did you come up with this idea? Like, it's fascinating.
So it just stems from it stemmed from this, like, weirdness in high school and just being kind of goofy with your buddies. And then there's, in the whole punk scene, there's a definite punk culture and punk fashion, right? Everybody can kind of picture the, plaid pants with rips and patches and, spiked hair. And I never gave 2 shits about fashion or putting that much effort into the way I looked.
Yep.
But I did like the uniqueness of an appearance kind of being, the way you present yourself being just a little bit different, like your personality. So, and, we're young and we'd shop at the Goodwill, find funny shirts. And, I found a love of dress pants. And these were not like nice dress pants.
No.
They were just like pinstripe, or they'd have checkers on them. And I'm like, man, these are, I'm kind of digging these. And it just organically became just this. I guess this is just what I wear.
That's what Wes wears. Everyone knows Wes is the guy that wears dress pants.
I will have to confess, I don't wear dress pants regularly anymore, but I still do not wear blue jeans. I think I own one pair of technically black denim.
Technically,
I think it's if they haven't ripped. I have a tendency to rip my pants. My wife makes fun of me all the time, so I don't remember if that one pair of black denim is still in the closet. But I still don't wear blue jeans. I don't think I've worn blue jeans in, oh God,
hilarious,
25 years.
I love it. And before we really get going, kind of on your freshman year, I'd love to talk a little bit about Murray, and like, it's a unique place. It's a unique Division I program. Like, I think when people think like D1 baseball, they think like it's easy and there's a ton of money in the program and you've got great top of the line everything. And while Murray State certainly has a lot of really awesome things to it, I mean, there was a huge discrepancy between a Murray State and a UK, or a Murray State and a Mississippi State. And we got to play some of those teams, so we got to really see firsthand the differences. So like, like our field had no lights at the time.
No bleachers.
What? Yeah, no bleachers.
No
There was just like a
bleachers.
seated area, right?
It was like a stepped grass and retaining wall.
Yeah, and I think things have they've continued to upgrade the facilities as time has gone on, and after you and I have left, it looks beautiful out there now.
Oh, it's beautiful, amazing.
From pictures that I've seen. Like I said, field had no lights, so we didn't even have a true indoor hitting facility. We shared that little kind of band room. Remember that? Under the football stands, and that place was dangerous, dude. Like,
it was very dangerous.
I got a ricochet off the wall one time, and it burned off half my eyebrow. I had one eyebrow for a whole semester, dude.
I remember that.
It's crazy. That was dangerous, and we had to share with the marching band. What's that?
Noonan almost blinded himself in that same thing. Ricochet hit him in the eye. Dude, damn near lost.
Yep. So I started wearing a helmet when I would be throwing BP or like flips and stuff like that. So, you know, we didn't get the same amount of like free gear that UK got. Like they had like a locker, you know, like a huge room that you could go get whatever you want, you know, and you know, like we had do you remember the ball cleaner with the racers in it? A unique thing. I've never seen one since. So I remember Coach Mack showing me that, and like we'll get a good laugh out of this, but Coach Mack had this big brown box essentially with like school erasers in it, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's similar.
Yeah, and he would throw the baseballs in there, and you'd like wind it up, and it would essentially clean the baseballs. Right. I believe it was like even from Johnny Reagan. It was like an old thing.
This thing. I don't know if it was ever meant for that, but it was ancient by the time we got there.
Yeah, and so like I mean, like this is a little tongue in cheek, but I remember when we would go to, you know, like a UK or a Mississippi State or whatnot, like somehow magically we would, you know, come back with a few more balls than we came with, or our balls would be a little nicer.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you remember this. This might have been the year after you left. We played at Ole Miss one year, and I remember we played there a few years, but one year in particular, I remember there were like fraternities and like students that showed up early for our batting practice. And every ball that we hit out of the park in batting practice, they would fill the thing with obscenities and throw it back on the field. And of course, like you're saying, our program not having an excess of wealth, we didn't throw those balls away.
They became BP balls.
I remember like a month later, you'd be taking BP, and then all of a sudden you would just like a ball would be coming in, and it's like that ball has a penis drawn on it. You know, it's like it just became part of it. You know, that was just part of Murray State baseball.
That is so perfect. I love it.
And the indoor gym that we would sometimes practice in when it was, you know, when it was too cold or it was kind of this you know, double-edged thing, because on one hand, you know, you're just, for me, like I'm just stoked to be at a D1 school, and I'm stoked to get anything for free. But then on the flip side, you know, you talk to your buddies I had a buddy who went to UK, and, you know, we played Mississippi State, and you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I got a free glove and a bat and one pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And then you show up there, it's like, oh, they got entire outfits, and they've got, you know, it's so it was definitely unique, but it was uniquely Murray.
Yeah, and it gave us a level of grittiness, and in a way as well, you know, like that kind of dog mentality in us, that we didn't have the same things that they had, and like we were going to fight and scrap for what we got too. So
100%.
Like, in some ways good, in some ways bad, who knows, but that's how we had it, so we made the best of it, right?
Exactly, man. And that was Murray. And like, you know, there's the joke that, you know, half the school didn't know that there was a baseball team. You know, like for those unfamiliar with Murray State, back in, you know, the 70s and 80s, the baseball field was right in the heart of campus.
Yeah,
like,
that would be cool.
I've heard stories of, you know, some of the old timers, the guys who used, you know, at these alumni events, they'll tell stories like, oh yeah, people be walking to class, it's nice out, they decide to skip class and watch us play.
Yeah.
You know, and meanwhile we're playing, and the only people who ever walked by were folks walking to and from Walmart with arms full of groceries. You know, like other than that, you know, nobody really knew that we were there. But and Murray would just be in a small town in Western Kentucky, but yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Same, dude. It was still an awesome experience that I wouldn't change either. So this is an interesting time, man. This is your freshman year, and I've got some thoughts on this, and we've got some stuff to talk about here. But essentially, what you ended up being, is our bullpen catcher, and you got about 6 at bats, and you did not get a red shirt. So I'd love to hear kind of what your thoughts were on this year, how you feel like it went, or what was going on for you. How were you seeing it?
So yeah, freshman year, after kind of the feeling of getting to Murray and getting acquainted kind of wore off. You get into the routine, you get into, you realize you're all a team, you're playing together, and you're comparing yourself with these guys. And I remember I had some great days in practice. I had some great, inter squads and things like that. And I was feeling confident. And it was the first road trip. Our first away game was actually at the University of Louisville. Me being from Louisville, I was like, oh, this is cool. I hope I travel. My name was on the list. I kind of had an idea I was just going to be the bullpen catcher. But it was still exciting to go. Did not, get any kind of playing time that first game. And then we went from University of Louisville to University of Kentucky, and then a 3-game stint in Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And at the University of Kentucky, I got a pinch hit late in the game. I think bases were loaded. And I've heard this since, that apparently Coach Mack turned to somebody and said, watch this, he's going to hit a grand slam. You just, really? Building it up like it was. I ended up getting a sac fly, which to me, I was like, awesome, I got an RBI. I'm a college baseball player.
Yeah.
And then we went to Mississippi State, which I had a blast being a bullpen catcher in Mississippi State, because anybody's unfamiliar, that's where all the bullpen is out past right field, and that's where all of the fraternities and folks hang out. And they'd bring us food. They were super kind, and I would whisper things for them to yell at our right fielder in exchange for some chicken wings. And I don't know if you remember Chad Allen.
Yeah,
he was playing right field, and I was like, hey, he just chipped his tooth. He looks like Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. Yell that at him.
Oh my gosh, he did. And he did have a chip.
Yes, he did. And so those first 5 games, I was just kind of awestruck. I was like, wow, this is college baseball. These are 3 big programs. I did get an at bat against Mississippi State, grounded into a double play. But I remember kind of having this awe-inspiring, wow, never a second thought, I just consider myself lucky to be there. And then as freshman year kind of, went on, I kept just being the bullpen catcher, never really getting a substantial chance to play. It'd be a pinch hit here, a pinch hit there. Yeah. But otherwise, and about halfway through the season, this is kind of how I resigned myself. And you and I have talked about this, that the decision to not redshirt me was not approached with any kind of malice or
no.
It was just, and honestly, if you would have asked most people, with even some kind of knowledge of college athletics, they would have looked at me and said,
probably not ready. Maybe.
Yeah, he's not ready. But is he gonna be, a huge player on our team, or is he just gonna be a player?
That's a great point.
I
probably the signs point to just a player.
Yeah, and I think you kind of have this. Yeah, that's exactly how I viewed myself. I'd be happy to start most games eventually. Yeah. But never foresaw myself doing what I did, and so you kind of have these 2 sides, 2 approaches here. It's do you take the safe route and say, well, it doesn't hurt anybody just to redshirt them and give them a chance to save that year, or it's we can give him the experience, hopefully get a chance to let him get some experience. It never ended up happening, but by not giving him that red shirt, we're getting him, he's traveling with the team. He's with the team nonstop, which I learned later, you can actually still travel with the team if you redshirt. I could have still been the bullpen catcher and redshirted.
Yeah.
But you know, it's all in the past. But yeah, I think there's I don't think there was. I think there was an argument for not really seeing the point in redshirting. It was what would have changed.
Yeah, you know what? This is a perfect moment. I've got it's a long clip. It's about a 3-minute clip from Coach Mack here, and he kind of I asked him about this because I mean it's easy to look back and be like, okay, Wes's career went amazing, but I think for quite some time he held some. This was somewhat of a painful memory for him to some degree, but I hope we can come to some peace with it here and let's just hear what Coach Mack has to say about it.
Definitely.
Coach Mack in his own words. All right, Coach Mack.
I have to ask you about context about his freshman year and why he got 6 at bats and was not redshirted, and just I'd love to hear what your thoughts were there.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's a really good question. It's a valid question, and it's something that bothered me for a while. As we said, we wanted to play him, and to be honest, once we started to play him, we then kind of realized at that time in his career, he wasn't as far along as we thought he was.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. Those sorts of things are always, it's not black and white, and
right.
They're always it's a mixture of things. The other guys playing his position, big factor. Are they playing real well? Are they stinking it up? They're stinking it up. He gets more opportunity. They're playing well. He gets a little less opportunity. So at the end of that year, then when it really, I was like, dadgum, I remembered it as 10 at bats. Okay, 6 at bats. That's bad. Okay, so anyway, the next year, when he comes out and he's just really playing well. I mean, he's really playing well. So now I'm really kicking myself. It's like, dadgum, this guy is really playing well. He's going to be a good one. He's going to keep getting better. And and I'm thinking, well, we just pretty much wasted a year last year. So then he goes next year and he's even better. And I'm like, dadgum, at first, and I'm keep looking back at first year.
Right.
Well, then he gets so good the next year, he kind of lets me off the hook because it's like he ain't going to be there for a 5th year. Wes Cunningham isn't going to be so then I look back and I say, okay, well, did the fact that his freshman year, not that I had this planned, but I just look back and I'm evaluating. Did the fact that his freshman year he didn't redshirt, he was with the team all the time, traveled with the team, got a few at bats, practiced every day as if he's preparing to play, rather than being the redshirt guy that's with you some of the time, most time not on the road, not getting. So then I think, well, did that possibly put him a little bit ahead the second year when he really did play? Did he came out of the gates, hit the ground running as a sophomore?
Right.
Did the fact that he played some and everything wasn't just totally new? He had traveled, he'd been to some places, he'd been around it, he'd seen more. His last game was not a high school game. Did that affect him positively? Think, well, you could make a case for that. But the fact that he, as it turned out, after his 2010 season with 22 home runs, he wasn't going to be back for a 5th year the next year anyway.
There's Coach Mack in his own words.
Yeah, man. I kind of wrote down 4 things that I completely agree. And like I said, Coach Mack doesn't have a malicious bone in his body. He is a
kind man to his heart.
He is. I mean, he is a stand-up guy. He's a great role model. And I never once looked back and thought, man, he didn't redshirt me for some reason or other. He mentioned, not being as far along as they thought. I 110% agree with that. Like I said, I had some good games in intramural, but I was still, a little bit of a head case. I was still trying to figure out my own physicality.
Yeah.
I was still, trying to get the feel of playing at the next level. So when I did get the little opportunities that I got at bat here and at bat there, I never performed. I wasn't as far along as they probably wanted me to be, as I rightfully should have been to be, a regular position player.
Yeah.
He also says, the guys ahead were playing well. Peyton was the starting catcher, which
Big
you
Merm.
remember. Big Merm, man. That dude could drop tanks. And, he was a great catcher.
He was a solid
was,
Division I catcher. Absolutely.
Yeah. He was the star in our lineup. He was that big, heavy hitter.
Yep.
And then his backup, Daniel Miller, was one of the best catchers I've ever played with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he was
solid behind the plate.
Just defensively an amazing catcher.
He was.
So yeah, I wasn't going to out hit Peyton, and I wasn't going to out catch.
Well said.
Miller.
Yeah. Well said.
And and then he talks about the fifth year kind of being a moot point, because after the next 3 seasons there wasn't going to be a fifth year.
No.
And I think we all understand that. I think
Sure.
the hindsight being 2020, it's more of the, would it have changed
your draft position,
my draft position,
or the money
I
offered?
made?
Yeah.
Would it have changed, the length of my leash in minor league ball, which, we can get into this, a little bit on down the line.
Absolutely.
But, it's kind of that ripple effect of like, all right, if that changes, does it change everything else? And now looking back as a 36-year-old, would I have really wanted some of those changes to have happened? So it's interesting to think back on, but and then the last point that he made that I thought, and I honestly, until I will, you sent me this clip a few weeks back. The last point I had never even considered, and it was that that second year I kind of hit the ground running. I had that kind of veteran experience, that more of a, and even if it didn't translate as playing time on the field or number of at bats under my belt, it was the traveling with the team. It was, our first away series. It wasn't my first time learning the ropes and getting the feel of being in someone else's dugout, or the pregame rituals and the pregame routines. That was all, that was the norm for me. I was coming in as a second year going through all those motions.
That's well said.
So I do think that, there's something to be said about kind of having that like old dog mentality versus, all right, I didn't get to see any of this last year. I'm coming in fresh, with something to prove. And so there's a lot to be said. And like you said, none of this, it'd be nice to paint it all with like, oh, we had this amazing forethought and foresight that we knew what was going to happen, but we didn't. And I'm appreciative that I can look back and recognize the benefits, as opposed to just being some sour old man who looks back and is just like, well, if only he would have given me I could have, I mean, and I'm thankful that you talked to Mac about it. It was never something him and I ever, a topic we ever broached, or, and it's, he made a lot of great points, and it's fun to think about it now, looking back with those different.
It's fascinating. And I sent you this, and not for nothing, like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but it makes for an absolutely amazing start to your story, right? Like, that you were a bullpen catcher with 6 at bats, and you go on to rewrite the history offensively in Murray State. And then, like, I also mentioned this to you. This is the definition of, was this actually a good thing or a bad thing? This is the Taoist farmer parabola. If you're not familiar, I'll just run this story real quick. There was an old farmer that he had a horse and a son. The horse ran off, and his neighbor said, "Oh, you're so unlucky that your horse ran off." And he goes, "I don't know what to make of this." Next day, the horse, runs back, because, I mean, unlucky because they can't farm. Horse comes back the next day with 20 horses. Neighbor says, "You're so lucky. Now you have 20 horses to plow your farm, and you can expand." And farmer says, "I don't know what to make of this." Right. And then the next day, the son is trying to break one of these horses and train them, falls off and breaks his leg. Same thing. The neighbor says, I don't know what to make of it. Or dad says, I don't know what to make of this. This is, is this good or bad? The next day, the Imperial Army comes and says, we're taking your son away to war. He's of war age. And he says, my son's got a broken leg. He's lame. He can't go. So son stays. The next day, that whole army gets slaughtered. So what is good and what is bad? I mean, something that you think might not be a good thing can turn out to be a good thing later. And I think possibly that this lit a fire under your butt.
I think
in a big way, because you were a motivated man after this on a mission. And
I mean, I think there is 100% truth to both the parable and how it applied to me personally. That freshman year, once I kind of, I had kind of resigned after a certain point, like, all right, I'm just going to be the bullpen catcher.
Yeah.
So it was more of like, all right, then I can kind of switch up my focus. During the season, you're still going to the weight room, but it's more of maintaining, right? Yeah. To prevent injury and to make sure you're not, because you're sweating so much, you're losing all your, you build in the off season and you maintain during the season.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm, in my head, it was like, no, screw that. I'm going to build. I'm going to keep building.
Yeah.
And, it lit a fire under my ass my freshman year, because it was like, all right, well, I'm going to have fun traveling with the team, getting all that. But I'm not going to train like I'm playing every day. I'm going to train as if this is a longer off season to prepare for next year when I have a chance to play.
So you made the best of it. Your circumstances,
exactly,
which is beautiful, dude. I love that.
And the next year I come out and I've got something to prove, and I've got this veteran mentality, but no ABs to show for it. And so I come out, and sophomore year, which, as anybody who played with us can attest, it looked, my offensive capabilities looked a lot different that starting that sophomore year than they ended up looking at my senior year. But a lot of that kind of comes from that, I'm going to figure out a way mentality.
Yeah. So before we move on to your sophomore year here, I've got a couple good TO clips to play. So Tyler Owen here, love this guy. Had an awesome time talking with him. That's one of my brothers. A lot of us, a lot of things that got brought up was kind of how raw you were when you first showed up, right? So here's a couple funny TOs. This one is called "What's a Balk?"
You may remember this. I remember a deep. I say deep because there was no such thing as a deep conversation about baseball with Wes, but he was legitimately curious as to what constituted a balk. He did not know what a balk was. He said, I'll never forget it, because he was as serious as can be. He goes, I still don't understand the balk. He goes, I just don't get it. Yeah.
That's so perfect.
I know. It's like, that's your All-American.
I know.
That's perfect. And then, so this one is going to be called Tyler Owen, If I Had Told You. Here we go.
If I had told you his freshman year that he was going to go on to be the greatest offensive player in Murray State history, what would you have told me?
Dude, I would have told you are absolutely nuts. I would have been like, Blake, are you okay?
I totally agree with that. I totally agree.
It's like, because that would be basically, ultimately you saying, hey, this guy that is our bullpen catcher is going to go down as the greatest Murray State hitter of all time.
Right?
It just sounds crazy, even coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Man, and honestly, he could not have hit the nail on the head any more squarely, man. Like, I told people that for years. Like, if you would have told me that, I would have done what I did, nobody would have believed you.
Nonsensical.
I mean, it's the truth, and that kind of goes back to that whole, what Coach Mack was saying. It was like, he wasn't ready. He wasn't, we didn't see him as being what he was.
Right.
And then the balk clip, man. Dude, that's so spot on.
It is.
Dude, because, I mean, you get there, like, the guys we're with, I mean, you, KT, TO, Seth Hudson, some of these guys, like, you all lived and breathed baseball.
100%, yeah.
And, like I admired it, but I also couldn't really wrap my head around it. Like I remember trying to explain it to some people. I was like, all right, so their obsession with the sport of baseball and watching it in addition to playing it is like my obsession with music. I was like, okay, I can make it make sense in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and so I remembered kind of having these conversations with people like, wait, what are the basics again? Can you please explain some of this stuff to me?
All right. Hey, Wes, we are right at 2 hours here. So let's take 5-minute break and then come right back. You cool with that?
That sounds perfect.
All right, brother. And this is just going so amazing. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm having a great time. I hope you are too.
Yes, sir.
All right, buddy. 5 minutes.
All right.
All right, buddy. A little disclaimer before we get rolling here. You're about to hear some ads. They are all from local entities that want to support the baseball community. A lot of these guys have deep connections. We're players themselves, so if you see having a need for any one of these services, please go patronize these guys. Thank you. We are also brought to you by Sheehan & Sheehan Lawyers, located at 1215 South 4th Street, Suite A, 217-544-0701. Go see them for all your adoption, ag law, business commercial law, estate planning, real estate planning, and personal injury needs. I'm talking Pat Sr., Pat Jr., and Willie. I grew up playing ball with Willie. Pat Jr. was a heck of a ball player at SHG, SCI, and the U of I. We appreciate you guys. We are also brought to you by Matt Brewer, an attorney at the law offices of Stephen Kelly here in town. He can be reached at 217-544-8000 or mbrewer@stephenkelly.com. He practices exclusively in personal injury and workers' comp, Matt being a standout football and baseball player at SHG. He then went on to be a standout at SIU Carbondale and then had a short career in the Diamondbacks organization. What a stud. We appreciate you, Matt. We are also brought to you by Josh Badman of Radon Fighters. He can be reached at 217-823-9536. This is a great guy. He's my fellow firefighter. Use post-game spread as a code to save $25 on a radon inspection. If you're buying a home or just want peace of mind for radon in your house, please give Josh a call. He was a standout player at Morrisonville back in the day and then played at SCI for Coach Torr in the early 2000s. Go see Radon Fighters. We are also brought to you by Cardinal Cleaning. They can be reached at cardinalcleaningonline.com and 217-679-6567. The owner-operator, Adam Springer, local baseball dude, family friend, stand out at Chatham Glenwood in the mid-90s. Also had a stellar career at Rend Lake and Kentucky Wesleyan. Cardinal Cleaning can take care of any cleaning needs you have. Home, business, restaurant, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever you need, they can take care of you. Get a hold of Cardinal Cleaning. They'll do the rest.